Good day and assalamu alaikum. My name is Yasin Makaraya from BA's Forestry, and I'm going to talk all about the diaspora of the Moros. So first, let us know what the diaspora means. Diaspora refers to the movement of the population from its original homeland. It means it is a scattered population with a common origin in a smaller geographic area. Diaspora can also refer to the movement of the population from its original homeland. So in today's generation, we can see that many of the Moros have scattered all around the Philippines. So I'm going to discuss how it all happened. So there are many events that lead to the diaspora of the Moros in the Philippines. So first one is the massacre in the Rock. So if there was once Philippine president who was close to the hearts of the Moros, he must have been President Diosdado Macapagal. So President Diosdado Macapagal's presidential term started from December 30, 1961 to December 30, 1965. So as we can see, his presidential term lasted for 5 years. He was known for being close to the hearts of the Moros. When he first came to Manila as a student, barely less than a year was left to the term of President Macapagal. But even in such a brief period of time, he could not fail to feel the warmth and sincerity in the man and even other Moro students, mostly shy and unassuming. He had such a moving personality stayed longer in power. The violence that rocked Mindanao in the 1970s would have taken place sometime much later. But he was defeated in the 1965 presidential election, and the man who beat and succeeded him was Ferdinand Marcos, who like other Ferdinand. His surname was Magellan. He was instrumental in sowing the seed of enmity that finally made an already seething social volcano erupt. It was President Macapagal himself who formally put forth the Sabah claim in 1962 based on the sovereignty once exercised by the Sulu Sultanate over the northern Borneo territory. In the case of President Marcos, it was an open secret that, in addition to normal procedure in international law, that disputes between among states be resolved through pacific methods like negotiations and through the adjudication of the International Court of Justice. He resorted to the extralegal actions in securing the claim. There are many events that led to diaspora of the Moros, and the other members of our group will discuss it to you.
So, the Jabida Massacre, or also known as the Corregidor Massacre, refers to an incident which members of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, AFP, are said to have massacred a number of Moro Muslims recruits who were escaping their covert training to reclaim Sabah. Sources differ regarding the details, with the number of victims ranging from 14 to 68, and some sources asserting that the massacre is a myth. The massacre happened on March 18, 1968, on the rocky island of Corregidor. The Jabida massacre is widely regarded as having the catalyst behind the modern Moro insurgencies in the southern Philippines. So, in 1963, the resources-rich territory of Sabah, which had been under British control since the late 19th century, formally became part of the Federation of Malaysia. The Philippines, however, protested this, claiming that Sabah had never been sold to foreign interest and that had only been leased or pajak by the Sulu Sultanate and therefore remained the property of the Sultan and by extension the property of Republic of the Philippines. The alleged sole survivor of the massacre, Jibin Arula, recounted how the young Moro recruits were taken in batches of 12 to a remote airstrip where they were executed with machine gun by their military handlers. Arula, who was wounded in the left knee, um, managed to attach himself to driftwood long enough to be rescued by the fishermen from the nearby province of Cavite. There has been an official count and the different sources number of the victims from 11 to about 200. The Operation Merdeka. This dispute is believed to have led by the Philippine President of Diosdado Macapagal, then later on Ferdinand Marcos, to establish special military units tasked with fomenting dissent amongst Sabah's non-Malay ethnic groups, namely the Tausug and Sama. Two groups closely aligned ethnically and culturally with Filipinos. The code name of this destabilization program was Operation Merdeka or Operation Freedom. Merdeka means freedom in Malay. So with Manuel Sikio as project leader and then Major Eduardo Abdul Latif Martilino as operation officer. The object of this program was annexation of Sabah to the Republic of the Philippines. The plan was involved the recruitment of nearly 200 Tausug and Sama Muslims aged to 18 to 30 from Sulu province and Tawi-Tawi, and their training in the island town of Simunul in Tawi-Tawi. Simunul was where the Arab missionary Mahdum built the first mosque in the Philippines in the 13th century. The recruits felt giddy about the promise not only of a monthly allowance but also over the prospect of eventually becoming a member of an elite unit in the Philippine Armed Forces. From August to December 1967, the young recruits underwent training in Simunul. The name of the commando unit was Jabida. On December 30, 1967, 100 to 135 to 180 recruits boarded a Philippine Navy vessels for the island of Corregidor in Luzon for specialized training. The second phase of the training turned mutinous when the recruits discovered their true mission. It struck the recruits that the plan would mean not only fighting their brother Muslims in Sabah, but also possibly killing their own Tausug and Sama relatives living there. Additionally, the recruits had already begun to feel disgruntled over the non-payment of the promised monthly allowance. The recruits then demanded to be returned home, and that's all.
Good day, everyone. I am Firdausi Haji Jamal from Diaspora. So today I will discuss the founding of MIN or Mindanao Independence Movement. So on May 1, 1968, Dato' Tugmatalang organized the Muslim and later Mindanao Independence Movement or MIM. He recognized the underlying the Charter of the United Nations and the Declaration of Human Rights that all people consisting of the minority in a given state possess the right to self-determination. The Islamic World Congress has affirmed the above principles, particularly the rights of Muslims, who are the minority in non-Muslim state, to self-determination. The systematic extermination of the Muslim, like the Corregidor, Blasco, and the policy of youth isolation and dispersal of the Muslims communities have been pursued vigorously by the government to the determination. Number three is the systematic extermination of the Muslim youth, like the Corregidor Blasco and the policy of the isolation and dispersal of the Muslim communities have been pursued vigorously by the government to the detriment of the Muslims.
Everyone, hi ma'am. My name is Muhammad Alairi Haji Ahmad Kadir. Today I am tackling about the Mindanao-Sulu crisis. So let me give a brief introduction about the Mindanao-Sulu crisis. So it refers to the prolonged and faceted conflict in the southern Philippines, primarily centered around the island of Mindanao, in the Sulu archipelago. Rooted in historical grievances, cultural diversity, and ethno-religious complexities, the region has witnessed persistent tensions and insurgency movements and acts of violence. The struggle for self-determination by the Moro people, who are predominantly Muslim, has given rise to various armed groups, including the Moro National Liberation Front and the Moro National Liberation Front and the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters, the BIFF. These groups have pursued autonomy or independence, challenging the authority of the Philippine government. The presence of Abu Sayyaf, a militant group with ties to international terrorism, has further complicated this situation. Their activities, including kidnappings and bombings, have not only added a layer of security concerns but also have attracted a global attention. Efforts to address the Mindanao-Sulu crisis have involved peace negotiation, constitutional amendments, and the establishment of autonomous regions. The creation of Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, BARM, reflects one such initiative aimed at addressing the region's complex issues. Despite these endeavors, the challenges persist, necessitating ongoing diplomatic, socio-economic, and security measures to achieve a comprehensive and lasting resolution to Mindanao-Sulu crisis. In human affairs, a crisis is an unstable or crucial time when a bad situation will take a turn for the better or for the worse. The state of affairs in Moroland had become very bad by the late 1960s, and by the early 1970s had reached crisis proportion. Three events in particular helped to precipitate the crisis in the Mindanao and Sulu. The Corregidor incident are clouded in a fog of conflicting reports, but at least 28 Muslim recruits called Jabida Commandos, out of a larger number undergoing guerrilla warfare training in Corregidor Island, allegedly in a secret preparation for the Philippine military operation in Sabah, codename Operation Merdeka, were treacherously and summarily executed late in March 1916 by the Philippine Army personnel. They were reported executed months, or says another version, over the prospects recently revealed to them of being sent into action against brother Muslim in Malaysia. According to the latter version, the Muslim recruit at first had been told that they were training to fight communists, but mutinied when they learned the truth. One trainee escaped to tell tale which became at once cause celebrity in Philippine politics and led to rapid deterioration in Philippine Malaysian relations. Those relations had been badly strained anyway since 1962 when former President Macapagal had formally put forth the Philippine claim to Sabah, based on a tenuous sovereignty once exercised by the Sultanate of Sulu over the northern Borneo territory. Few Moros paid much attention to the claim, and most of those who thought about it at all felt that Sabah was better off with Muslim Malaysia than with Christian Philippines. The Corregidor incident angered Malaysians, and particularly Tun Mustafa, the Chief Minister of Sabah. Many Moros were appalled and incensed at the inhuman treatment of the Moro trainees, and for the Moros and the Corregidor incident was the Jabida massacre, one group in Cotabato province, headed by the former governor Datu Odtong Matalam, declared on May 1 of that year that the formation of the Muslim, later Mindanao, independence movement aimed at the establishment of an Islamic Republic of Mindanao and Sulu. The MIM itself did not have a long history and was never more than a local movement in Cotabato, but the desire for independence from the Philippine Republic was rekindled in the minds and hearts of many Moros. Moreover, the small group of Muslim intellectuals and students in Manila, angered by the Jabida massacre, began conspiring and preparing for the anti-government activities, including guerrilla warfare, with the secession of Moroland as the goal. That seeds for what blossomed into the Moro National Liberation Front were known by the group and cultivated by the prominent congressmen. The leaders were to include Nor Missouri of Sulu. Then Missouri is the instructor of the University of the Philippines. For mid-1970 and on into 1971, violence erupted in the two areas most affected by Christian migration, Cotabato and Lanao del Norte. In both those areas, Christians had long since become the majority population, but for the time they found it expedient to effect political alliance with Muslims. Thus, they supported the election of some Muslims to the public office on the local, provincial, and national levels by the early 1970s. However, Muslim-Christians relations had worsened to the point where Christians were no longer saw any gain in political cooperation with Muslims, and the two populations became radically polarized, especially as the November 8, 1971 election drew near. In Cotabato, the MIM had aroused Christian fears of Moro uprising. There were reports of Muslim youth undergoing months of rigid training in the Middle East and Malaysia. And in secret camps in Cotabato itself, some Christians evacuated to safer places, others were determined to stay and fight for the productive farms and businesses for their hard work established. Conditions were ripe for the explosion, which finally came toward the middle of 1970 in UP, North Cotabato. There a Christian Ilonggo settler, Feliciano Lucis alias Toothpick, led a band of terrorists, later on called Ilagas Rats, in attack against Moros, at whose hands they had allegedly suffered terrorism and exploitation for years. Soon the shooting spread from the Upay to the other parts of Cotabato, where pent-up tensions burst into blazing fury. Ilaga bands sprang up everywhere, and at this point, bands of armed Muslims appeared. The latter were quickly dubbed black shirts because of the uniforms and were said to be military arm of the MIM. By the end of 1970, the fighting between Ilagas and black shirts in Cotabato resulted in closing of many schools, disruptions of the economy, and mass evacuation of thousands of innocent victims. The Social Welfare Administration estimated that some 30,000 Muslims, Christians, and terrorists had been forced to abandon their homes and farms. In Cotabato, the MIM had aroused Christian fears of Moro uprising. There were reports of Muslim youth undergoing months of rigid training in the Middle East and Malaysia. And in secret camps in Cotabato itself, some Christians evacuated to safer places, others were determined to stay and fight for the productive farms and businesses for their hard work established. Conditions were ripe for the explosion which finally came toward the middle of 1970 in UP, North Cotabato. There a Christian Ilonggo settler, Feliciano Lucis alias Toothpick, led a band of terrorized later on called Ilagas Rats in attack against Moros at whose hands they had allegedly suffered terrorism and exploitation for years. Soon the shooting spread from the UPI to the other parts of Cotabato where pent-up tensions burst into blazing fury. Ilaga bands sprang up everywhere and at this point, bands of armed Muslims appeared. The latter were quickly dubbed black shirts because of the uniforms and were said to be military arm of the MIM. By the end of 1970, the fighting between Ilagas and black shirts in Cotabato resulted in closing of many schools, disruptions of the economy and mass evacuation of thousands of innocent victims. The Social Welfare Administration estimated that some 30,000 Muslims, Christians, and terrorists had been forced to abandon their homes and farms. Hi, my name is Muhammad Aleri Hajak Kadir, and hi ma'am. Today I'm gonna tackle about the Manili Massacre. The features of Manili Massacre was its meaningless. There were no big political or religious issue at stake, no significant personality clash, no prospect of commercial any gains for the party. The Manili Massacre occurred inside a mosque in Barangay Manili, Carmen, North Cotabato on June 19, 1971. At least 17 Muslim Moros, men, women, children, elderly were killed by the terror gang allegedly backed by the defunct PC Constabulary. One of the women, a teenager, was raped before she was killed in a nearby house. The residents of Manili were called for a meeting by some Christian leaders inside the mosque that fateful morning. Most of them did not have any hint that something tragic was about to happen to them. When the PC troops and the Ilaga members arrived, they demanded that the residents surrender their firearms. The residents asserted that they could not surrender a firearm since they don't have any. It was then that the murderers shot dead the community leader Haji Yusuf Nagi at close range outside the mosque. Afterwards, they lobbed grenades to the people inside. The Manili Massacre was just one of the atrocities perpetrated against the Moros at that time that alarmed them and their leaders. On July 21, 1971, concerned Moro politicians and religious leaders, including the groups of Moros, non-government organizations, intellectuals, businessmen, and students, issued a manifesto, a parts of which read, "We urge the Catholic hierarchy and the other Christian groups to exercise their moral and spiritual leadership, to appeal to their religionists to respect Islam and Muslims as their basis for peace and harmony. We appeal to all progressive and well-meaning Christians to exert their efforts in bringing about unity in order to prevent the disintegration of the nation. If we shall not get justice through peaceful and legal means, we hereby pledge today before God that despite our present peaceful and legal means, we hereby pledge today before God that we shall do our utmost to preserve our community and land. Toward this end, we are willing and ready to sacrifice our worldly possessions and even our lives as our forebears have done before us in defense of freedom in Islam." When the great Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, rest in peace, learned about the apparent genocidal campaign against the Moros, he sent assistance for the Moros refugees and later on even military and diplomatic support. The survivors and the relatives of the atrocities Manila Massacre are still waiting justice. They pin their hopes in their possible establishment of the National Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Commission for the Bangsamoro, which will address legitimate grievance of the Bangsamoro people, correcting historical injustices and addressing human rights violation and marginalization through land disposition.
Good day and assalamu alaikum. I am Abdullah Idris and I am the last reporter of my group. So in this video, I'm going to tackle about the Taco massacre. But as the situation was in Llano del Sur, the situation in the province of Lanao del Norte was worse. There, the most powerful political leaders were Muslim congressman rather, and Christian governor. They had begun as political allies in the mid 1960s, but by the 1970s, elections for constitutional convention delegates, they had become better rivals. This rivalry developed quickly into a political battle dividing Muslims and Christians. In 1971, groups of armed Muslims called Barracudas began depredations in towns on the northern coastline in support of the political cause of the Muslim candidate running for governor against the Christian incumbent in the November election. They were confronted by hastily formed groups of Christian Ilagas. By September, hostilities between the Barracudas and Ilagas had greatly escalated and led to large-scale evacuation of both Muslim and Christians. Muslims fled towards the Lake Lanao area and Christians went to the Iligan and Uzames. Some were going as far as Cagayan de Oro and Dumaguete City. The warfare in Magsaysay and several other Lanao del Norte towns had caused so many voters to flee that a special election had to be rescheduled for November 22. Though in the other towns, the November 8 elections took place on time. The Muslim candidate for governor was roundly defeated. In the 2 weeks following, military operations in Lanao del Norte were halted, and voters who had evacuated the several towns where there had been trouble encouraged to return home and vote for local officials. The full story is not known to this day, but a group of armed Moro voters returning after dark in several trucks from the special election in Magsaysay were fired up by government troops in Barrio Tacob and the municipality of Kauswagan. At least 40 Moros were killed, with no fatality on the government side. Their bodies were then reportedly mutilated by Christian civilian bystanders. This was the infamous Tacob massacre. So, the 1971 elections then were significant because they formalized the shift of political power from Muslims to Christians in part of Moroland. They also stimulated the rise and activity of rival Christian and Muslim groups, escalated the level of violence, and attracted the attention of Muslim states abroad. By the end of 1971, the Mindanao War had taken a toll of 800 lives spread to Zamboanga del Sur, where Ilaga bands appeared. Oh, and there were 100,000 refugees, and in 1972, the conflict spread to Zamboanga del Sur, where Ilaga bands appeared, and to Balabagan, near Malabang in Lanao del Sur, which, like Wao, had a mixed Muslim Christian population. There were rumors that Ilagas were preparing for an attack on Sulu, and the acting governor of that province warned that the Tausug Muslims were ready to deal with any such attack. In July, the Barracudas were reported conducting raids in Zamboanga del Sur, Zamboanga del Norte rather. Everywhere in Moroland, the atmosphere was tense. Here and there, Ilagas squared off against black shirts and Barracudas. So, when September 21, 1972, President Marcos declared martial law. throughout the Philippines. One of the reasons he gave for doing so was the existence of the conflict between Muslim and Christians in Mindanao and Sulu. The imposition of martial law, coupled with the government's determination to disarm the populace, including the Moros, only strengthened the resolve of dissident Muslims to struggle for independence. The first major defense of the martial law regime occurred in Lanao del Sur, when in the morning of Saturday, on October 21, 1972, a rebel force of several hundred Moros attacked the Philippine Constabulary headquarters in Marawi City, seized the Mindanao State University campus, and attempted to take the Pantar Bridge on the Marawi to Iligan Road. So the rebels called themselves as the Mindanao Revolutionary Council for Independence. By early Saturday evening, government reinforcements had arrived in Marawi. A battle raged for about 24 hours, by the end of which time the government had regained control over the city. The uprising ended as the attacking forces withdrew to the hills, leaving behind casualties. So, for several weeks, Marawi was like a ghost town. Martial law brought the Minilef into the open since 1968 or 1969. A number of Moro youths, later to be part of Bangsamoro BMA, had been quietly preparing for secessionist guerrilla warfare. Some of them going abroad for training. Soon after the declaration of martial law, the MNLF emerged as the strongest, best disciplined, and coordinated of these dissident Moro groups. The MNLF soon became the chief voice for the grievances and aspirations of the majority of Muslim Filipinos. Moreover, so uh, at the height of its power, which was in 1973 and 1974, the MNLF had at least 15,000 and possibly as many as twice that number men and women in its military arm. The Bangsamoro Army or BMA, it also had a solid base of support among the Moro people. One BMA commander in 1974 estimated that perhaps 55% of the Muslim Filipinos supported the front, 15% supported the government, and the rest were neutral. So, according to Professor Lila Noble of San Jose State University in California, martial law broadened the base of support and determined the timing of the resort to warfare by the core group of Muslim radicals. Three characteristics of martial law were critical. The centralization of the regime left power almost exclusively in Christians' hands. That's all. Thank